Morning, morning, morning. It's a Sunday morning. A Sunday morning. And we got the verdict of the Carmelo Anthony case. Yes, we did. We definitely did. It's one of those nostalgic type deals. Black people had hope. And some black people had hope. And a whole lot of white people didn't. And you say hope for what? Hope that Carmelo Anthony would be held accountable without losing decades of his life. Hope that being 17 years old would actually matter. And hope that somebody would look at this whole mess and say, yeah, this boy needs to be punished, but 35 years is damn too much. That was the hope. And now I'm going to make this conversation a little harder because since Carmelo Anthony was convicted, we've learned some things about both of these boys, and some of it ain't pretty. We learned things about Carmelo. We learned about messages, school records, allegations involving fighting and threats, Austin's history involving racist language, allegations involving Carmelo and his former girlfriend. And after hearing all that, I still think 35 years is too much. But I'm also not going to sit here and clean Carmelo Anthony up to make that argument. I don't need to. That's where I think people get themselves in trouble with cases like this. Everybody wants their side to have the good kid and the other side to have the bad kid. Well, apparently life didn't give us that nice little package. These were two teenage boys with histories. So let's talk about it. First, Carmelo didn't get his new trial. I kind of doubted that he would, but you hope that he would. Let's start with where we are right now. Carmelo asked for a new trial. He didn't get it. Judge Chitty, bang, bang. Chitty denied that request after a 2-day hearing. Carmelo's new lawyers argued that what happened during the original trial, including his private gentleman's agreement between the lawyers, affected his ability to receive a fair trial and affected the decision about whether he would testify. The judge said no. So as far as we know now, the conviction stands and that 35-year sentence stands. And apparently his legal team is going to fight through the appeals process, going to fight it again. Now here's where it gets interesting, right? Because during this fight for a new trial, we found out there was a whole bunch of stuff the original jury never heard. Stuff about Carmelo, stuff about Austin. And apparently the lawyers had agreed to keep much of that mess out of the trial and wanted them, I guess, just to concentrate on what was happening underneath that tent. I understand why somebody thought that was a good idea. This case was already racially explosive. But now that the information's out there, we can't pretend we don't know it or see it or hear it. Let's start with Carmelo, because I'm not going to duck Carmelo and what he said. Some of the information about Carmelo is disturbing. His former girlfriend reportedly accused him of stalking her after she tried to end the relationship. Prosecutors presented messages in which he allegedly threatened her. There were allegations and messages involving fights, messages involving weapons. There were records of previous school trouble. And prosecutors presented some extremely disturbing things he allegedly said about the violence. That's bad. I'm not going to give you some silly excuse for it. I'm not going to tell you, well, he was just joking. I don't know that. I'm not going to tell you teenagers just talk like that. Not all teenagers talk like that. Not all black teenagers talk like that either. And I'm not going to sit here trying to turn Carmelo into some choir boy because I don't need for him to be a choir boy to make this argument. If those records are accurate, Carmelo had some serious issues before he met Austin Metcalf underneath that tent, period. And apparently, on the morning Austin was killed, Carmelo's ex-girlfriend had complained to a school official that he was stalking her after they broke up. That is significant. You can't talk about Austin's past and then suddenly become blind when somebody brings up Carmelo's. Now, that's how this works. That's not how that works. I'm sorry. If we're putting everything on the table, put everything on the damn table and still have the same question. Does that mean 35 years was the appropriate sentence for what happened to Austin? That's where I separate these things, because Carmelo wasn't on trial for being a bad boyfriend. He wasn't on trial for every ugly text message that he ever sent. He was on trial for killing Austin Metcalf. And the jury had to determine what happened underneath that tent. They determined it was murder. Fine, then we get to punishment. And I still think 35 years was too much. Now let's talk about Austin, because his history came out too. And this is where this story got very uncomfortable for some people, because apparently Austin wasn't the spotless little kid, choir boy some people had created in their minds about him either. Court records revealed allegations involving bullying and fighting. There were disciplinary problems. There were angry issues. Something about them attacking the father and beating up the father. But the thing that jumped out at Black people was the racial stuff. The racial stuff. According to court records reported by CBS Texas, Austin and his twin brother had previously been caught spray painting graffiti that included KKK language, anti-Black language, anti-Semitic language, and the N-word. There were also documented instances of Austin reportedly using racial slurs at school. And there was an allegation that he bullied a Black student. Now, hold on. I'm not saying, therefore, Austin deserved to die. Some of you goofy goofies probably don't think that. Absolutely not. I don't care what somebody spray painted years earlier. That doesn't give another person permission to kill him. And I'm not saying Austin confronted Carmelo because Carmelo was Black. As far as I'm concerned, that has not been established. But don't tell me this information is completely meaningless either, because for over a year, this case has been sitting in the middle of a racial firestorm. Carmelo is Black, Austin is white, and now we're finding out Austin himself had a documented history involving racial slurs and racial graffiti. People are going to talk about that. Black people are definitely going to talk about that, because some people spent a year acting like race entered this story because Black people dragged us into it. Well, now we know race existed somewhere in Austin's history before Carmelo Anthony ever became a household name. That doesn't prove what happened underneath that tent was racial, but it does complicate that picture. That's all I'm saying. Now we've got two imperfect teenagers. And this is why I don't like the way people have talked about this case. Everybody wanted a hero and a villain. Life didn't cooperate like that. Carmelo apparently had troubling behavior in the past. Austin apparently had troubling behavior in his past. Carmelo reportedly had violent messages. Austin reportedly had anger and aggressive issues. Carmelo reportedly had serious problems involving his girlfriend, and Austin reportedly had racial and disciplinary issues himself. So now what? Do we decide which teenager had the uglier text messages and declare the other one the good kid? That's stupid. Neither kid's entire life can be reduced to the worst thing somebody found in his phone or his school record. Austin's racist graffiti doesn't mean Austin deserved to die. Carmelo's ugly messages don't mean Carmelo deserved whatever sentence Texas could possibly throw at him. That's precisely why we have trials. The question was supposed to be, what happened between these two boys that day? And this actually makes me understand the original agreement a little bit better. Apparently, the lawyers understood exactly what would happen if all those things came out. The trial would turn into, look how terrible Austin is, or, well, let's look how terrible Carmelo is. And pretty soon, nobody would be talking about what happened underneath that tent. We'd be having a conversation over which teenager had the worst history. And because one boy was Black and one boy was white, the racial temperature would go through the damn roof, which is pretty much what's happening right now. But there's another problem. Carmelo's new lawyers argued that this informal agreement affected how his original defense was handled, including his decision about testifying. That's part of why they wanted another trial. And the new judge has now rejected that argument. So the hope is gone, at least at this stage. And this brings me right back to the black and white reaction, because now we know more. And I'm seeing the same divide between the black and white community. Some black people looked at Austin's racial history and said, wait a damn minute, because suddenly they're wondering whether there was more going on with Austin than the public originally knew. Meanwhile, some white people looked at Carmelo's messages and history with his girlfriend and said, see what we told you? We told you exactly who he was. And I want everybody to shut the fuck up and slow down, because neither one of those things automatically tells us what happened underneath that tent. Austin used racial slurs previously does not prove he used one against Carmelo that day. Carmelo making violent statements previously does not by itself tell us exactly what was going on in his head when the confrontation with Austin happened. Background can give us context. It isn't a time machine either, so we still have to separate what we know from what we think. But I'll tell you what the new information does change for me. It makes me less interested in anybody trying to make either one of these boys a saint. Neither one of those boys was a saint. They were teenagers, and apparently they both had some serious issues, aggression issues, mental issues. That actually makes this whole thing sadder to me, because maybe there were warning signs around on both sides. These boys, they had adults in their life that didn't pay attention to some of these things. Carmelo allegedly threatened a girlfriend. That's serious. A teenager talking about weapons and violence. That's serious. Austin having anger problems. That was serious. Racial graffiti. That's serious. Bullying allegations. That's serious. How many warning signs do we overlook with teenagers because we say they're just kids, they're just kids? Then something terrible happens and suddenly everybody wants to know where it came from. Maybe it didn't come out of nowhere. But here's what hasn't changed for me. 35 years. That's what hasn't changed. And this is where some people are going to disagree with me. I don't care. They are saying, TPP, after hearing all the stuff about Carmelo, how can you still think 35 years is too much? Easy, because he was still 17. His past doesn't make him 25. His messages don't make him 30. His problems with his girlfriend don't make him a fully developed adult. They make him a troubled teenager, maybe a very troubled teenager. But that's actually when I want intervention to happen the most. Because if you've got a 17-year-old showing signs of violence, aggression, and instability, I want somebody trying to fix that young man before he becomes a 30-year-old showing the same type of behavior. Now, obviously, we're past prevention in this particular case. Somebody died. There have to be consequences. But I still believe there ought to be some possibility that Carmelo Anthony becomes something better than the person he was at 17. And that is the hope I've been talking about. This is what I mean when I say black people had hope and some white people didn't. Hope for what? Not a hope that Austin didn't matter. Not hope that Carmelo could kill somebody and go home. Not hope that everything would disappear. Hope that punishment wouldn't mean throwing the entire young man's life away. Hope that 17 would still count as 17. Hope that somebody would believe there could still be something worth saving in Carmelo Anthony. And yes, after the original judge was removed from the post-trial proceedings, some people had hope that maybe the courts would take another look. They did. The answer was no. The new trial was denied. So now the 35-year sentence remains. I'm still uncomfortable with 35 years. And I understand why some white people aren't. Because they're looking at Austin. And Austin doesn't get rehabilitation. Austin doesn't get a second chance. He doesn't get to become a better man at 30. Austin doesn't get any of that. He's dead. So I understand the person who says, why are you worried about Carmelo's future? Austin doesn't have one either. That's a powerful argument. I just don't agree with where it leads. Because taking Carmelo's future doesn't restore Austin's. We've already lost one life. How much of another life do we need before we decide the debt has been paid? That's the question. And I'm not going to let either side cheat. If you're supporting Carmelo Anthony, you don't get to pretend these allegations and messages about him don't exist. They do. They're disturbing. Deal with them. And if you're supporting Austin, you don't get to pretend his documented racial history and other reported problems don't exist either. They do. Deal with them. Neither history proves what happened underneath that tent, but both histories tell us these were complicated teenagers. And that's where I wish this conversation would finally grow up. Grow the fuck up, some of y'all. Because Austin doesn't have to be perfect for his death to be wrong. And Carmelo doesn't have to be perfect for 35 years to feel excessive. That's it. That's my position. I don't need a saint. I don't need a monster. I don't need to rewrite either teenager's life or history. Austin Metcalf should be alive. Carmelo Anthony deserved consequences for what the jury determined he did. And knowing what I know today about both of them, I still believe 35 years was too harsh. You can disagree or not. It doesn't matter. But at least disagree with the argument I'm making, because my hope was never that Carmelo Anthony would get away with killing Austin Metcalf. My hope was that we could punish a troubled 17-year-old without deciding there was nothing left in him worth saving. And after everything we've learned about Austin, after everything we've learned about Carmelo, and after Carmelo has now been denied another trial, that's where I stand about this. Okay? This is where I stand. 35 years was excessive. So let me read some things in the chat. That's my rant at 7 o'clock in the morning. Let me read this. Hello, everybody. Hello, Anthony J. Pat Paulson. He could have got 99 years. I get that too. Okay. What is this person? Stop already. The watermelon felon isn't getting out. Goofy Pat Paulson. Goofy. Over here, we don't talk reckless. We talk like we have common sense. Kamoto is a villain, of course. Bullying is wrong. Of course, bullying is wrong. All bullying is wrong. All of that. He was and is a monster. You're goofy. Grow up. I hate immature human beings. I hate immature human beings over the age of 25. Really. I really do. Carmelo's on his appearance this morning. Blacks hate admitting they raised money. Carmelo murdered that white kid. He didn't murder the white kid. He killed the white kid. There's a difference between murder and killing. Murder meant he intended to kill him. He didn't intend to kill him. He didn't intend to murder him. It's not murder, it's killing. Goofy. The race angle is a waste of energy. Yes, it is a waste of energy. Case closed. Okay. You raise monsters. Sure, we raise monsters. I raise monsters. Doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs too. Goofy Pat Paulson. You're demons and need to stay away from white people. No, you white people need to stay away from black people. Love much. Hello, thank you. Melo's statement matters more than Austin's because he killed Austin in a way that matches the things he was saying. Yeah, goofy. Hey, it is what it is. Both sides, only one side guilty. Carmelo stabbed a boy. Yes, he stabbed a boy. He's a monster. Not necessarily a monster. You're not saying you guys be killing me. Some of you white people be killing me. It's always a monster when they black, but it's never a monster when they white. Has anybody said anything about Tyler Robinson being a monster because he killed Charlie Kirk? Has anybody said anything about that one dude who went through a crowd and killed 3 or 4, 5 different people after he crossed the border from killing them? Has anybody said anything about being monsters? It's always a monster when they're black, but it's never a monster when they're white. Shut your ass up. I hate racial people when they don't do the even. I hate racial people. I was a grown man in the military at 70 and with my father before me. 17 is grown. Yes, sure it is when you need it to be. Blah, blah, blah. His parents hate him because they knew they failed him and raised a terrible killer. Okay. Remove the race to see this clear. Yes, we removed the race. I removed the race completely to see the whole thing. Maybe you need to do that. Why would you even need to mention race? Goofy. Funny because if he had murdered his black girlfriend, you wouldn't even be talking about this. If he would have, I don't care about it now. The niche guy. Okay, Carmelo is still alive, whether it's behind bars or not. He still gets to live. 35 years is not long enough. 35 years is excessive, in my opinion. Getting killed at a track meet is pure evil. Yeah, he didn't go there to murder someone. There's a difference between going there to murder someone and killing someone. Some of you goofy people, goofy people need to get that through your head. Murder and killed is two different things. Murder and killed. Goofy. 35 years is crazy, especially when another kid got 10 in Texas. Of course. It's crazy. Of course it's crazy. Okay. Kid waived his Fifth and Sixth Amendment and spoke to police. He did not get a jury of his peers. Seventh Amendment, and his sentence was cruel and unusual. Eighth Amendment, constitutional violation. I don't know what happened. That's crazy. That's wild. I'm a racist. Of course I'm a racist. To a racist human being, the minute I say white, I'm racist. That's why you goofy people need to be goofy somewhere else. Just because I say the word white doesn't mean I'm racist. Please understand that. Goofy, Pat Paulson, 1108. Jesus. Man, some of y'all need to really grow up. I swear to God. But that's neither here nor there. Those are my thoughts on the Carmelo case. And I'll have some more thoughts later on, but I just happened to run in at 7 o'clock, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for showing up. Thank you very much.